It's a conventional farm with paddocks studded with livestock. However, Trevor Ashby's farm near Mount Gambier in South Australia hides an extraordinary mystery. Many Australians would be astounded to learn of the surreal site lurking deep underneath, regarded as the closest humans can get to space without leaving the planet. Welcome to the Shaft, a bottomless pit of water that was a famous diving spot in the late 1960s and early 1970s, before being closed in 1973 due to a tragedy in which 4 divers died. Instead, the public outrage prompted the founding of the cave diving. When Ashby's grandfather was ploughing a paddock and a horse plunged its hoof through the surface, he discovered the shaft, which is thought to be at least 120 meters deep. The family attempted to fill it by hurling stones down it, but it was so large that they quickly realized they had no chance. The tiny hole hidden among the grass is still the sole means to enter the massive cave beneath. It's the region's darkest and deepest reported sinkhole. It's even utilized by South Australia police water operations, including last weekend, to train in search for persons or objects in underwater locales. In this video, let's dive into the deadly cave diving disaster, the Shaft, on our channel, Adventure Uncovered. What exactly is the Shaft? The entrance to the Shaft sinkhole was discovered in 1938 in Thompson's paddock on a farm near Allendale East, a few kilometers south of Mount Gambier. The hole was eventually widened to 1 meter or 3.3 feet in diameter to allow for further exploration. In the mid-1960s, a local diver descended the rain-enhanced 0.8 meter wide, 2.6 foot wide aperture into the cave's 17 meter wide, 56 foot wide lake chamber and made the first descent to a depth of roughly 21 meters or 69 feet. The cave is one of several deep solution features in porous limestone found in southern Australia. The main chamber measures approximately 140 meters or 460 feet long and 80 meters or 260 feet broad. The water level is about 7 meters or 23 feet below ground level, and the hole is much more comprehensive at this stage. A tunnel to the northwest goes to the depth of around 80 meters or 260 feet, and another to the east continues to a maximum depth of 124 meters or 407 feet. Divers and equipment are lowered into the chamber separately due to the hole's size and the drop's height. On a sunny day, the name is said to be derived from the dazzling shaft of the sunshine that passes through the entrance to the depths. The first reasonably detailed cavern map was created in 1984, following mapping and photographic dive that revealed the chamber as roughly oval. Further exploration was conducted in June of 1992, but the deepest areas were surveyed and mapped in 2002 and 2003. The shaft is on private property and only accessible to CDAA certified divers. Now, let's move on to a bit of background of this dangerous cave. On May 26, 1973, a group of 9 divers arrived in Mount Gambier, South Australia, with the goal of cave diving at the Shaft, a 3 foot or 0.91 meter wide sinkhole opening leading to a massive underwater cavern known among divers for its pure water and intriguing interior structure. The 8 divers were Gordon G. Roberts, John H. Bockerman, Christine M. Millott, Peter S., Larry Reynolds, Burr Glenn Millott, Robert J., and Stephen Millott. The 9th group member, Joan Harper, had decided not to dive and would remain beside the sinkhole, preparing hot soup and supporting the group. The group signed the guest book at BV Ashby's farmhouse the day before the accident and completed a successful dive at the sinkhole, extending a shot line approximately 150 feet or 46 meters into the water and reaching the primary point of interest known as the rock pile. This is a central pile of limestone rubble about 40 meters directly below the sinkhole entrance. They surfaced after briefly exploring the perimeter of the rock pile. The gang planned to return the following day to continue exploring the cavern with their shot line already in position. After replenishing their 72 cubic feet, 2 cubic meter cylinders at Mount Gambier, the crew arrived at the sinkhole on May 28th and rapidly descended to the rock pile. According to the divers' reports, they had no intention of exploring beyond the edge, a narrow and downward sloping prolongation of the cave on one side of the main chamber, far from natural light shaft given by the sinkhole opening. The surrounding cavern debris was dark, undiscovered, coated in loose silt and limestone debris, and extended downhill to depths where the effects of nitrogen narcosis became severe if the breathing gas was not diluted by helium. Even at the depths of the rock pile perimeter, the consequences of narcosis would have been substantial, potentially impairing the divers' judgment. While the initial descent was uneventful, the 8 divers ignored many well-known safety procedures early in the dive. The shot line did not run to the cavern bottom. There were no extra oxygen tanks, and the divers were not prepared with sufficient air management procedures. The divers had not been assigned specific diving partners and did not use any safety guidelines. Glenn Millot later indicated that they did not use safety lines because 8 different lines in such a cramped location would have created a risky situation for the divers. Robert Smith, who had dived at the sinkhole 8 times before and devised most of the dive plan, had not expected the other members of the group to go as far into the cave as they did. What exactly happened on that horrific day? With the assistance of former Chief Superintendent Wallace B. Budd, separate statements from the 4 surviving divers were pieced together to produce a timeline of what happened to the 4 victims. Smith began to feel the effects of nitrogen narcosis at the perimeter of the rock pile. His depth gauge read around 180 feet or 55 meters. Smith, an experienced diver familiar with narcosis symptoms, told his group that he was returning to the top of the rock pile. The group indicated that they would continue exploring. He lingered near the rock pile for almost 8 minutes, circling it for animal bones. He then noticed Glenn Millot's torch returning from where the others had gone. Glenn Millot had been watching his breathing and realized he was out of time. He tried to tap Christine Millot on the arm and informed her that her time was up, but the two were separated before he could. When Smith and Glenn Millot met and surfaced together, Larry Reynolds had already returned from his dive. Peter Burr appeared half a minute later with almost little air remaining in his tank. Glenn Millot swiftly put on a replacement tank and returned to the water, knowing the others would have equally low air supplies. He descended to 225 feet or 69 meters, where the cliff began to fall away. He discovered Stephen Millot's lamp and camera at the edge. Peter Burr returned to the cavern for another look, but no one was there. By then, the group had realized that they were hunting for bodies rather than survivors. When the surviving Durners turned around to return to the surface at the end of the planned dive, they witnessed Christine Millot and Gordon Roberts attempt to ascend back up to the rocky pile quickly. They swam straight up. Instead of climbing along the slope, they went down, probably because they were frightened their air would run out soon. The 2 divers swam straight up into a dome in the ceiling with no way out. Before Roberts signaled that they were lost, Reynolds reported seeing their torches urgently looking for an exit. Christine Millot and Gordon Roberts appeared frightened, according to Reynolds. The 2 had failed to discover a door because they likely suffered from nitrogen narcosis and were surrounded by silt, which allowed for little visibility. They ran out of air and drowned. Their remains were later discovered together beneath the ceiling dome from which they had failed to escape. Their remains were discovered together. One surviving diver claims to have seen a group member swimming strongly downhill further into the cave at about the same time. This was John Bockerman, who most likely suffered from severe nitrogen narcosis and may not have realized he was swimming to his death. At the greatest depth, his body was discovered roughly 20 feet or 6.1 meters deeper than the other 3 fatalities. Stephen Millot, the 4th casualty, may have been observed lost beneath the cave ceiling soon before the surviving divers surfaced. Even though his flashlight and camera were discovered deep at the base of the rock pile, his body was found under an overhang at a depth of only 50 feet. The day after the disaster, the police underwater recovery unit began searching the cave to a depth of 200 feet, or 61 meters. The search was quick and no bodies were discovered. The team was conscious that they were unprepared for diving in such conditions. Chief Inspector Wallace Budd of the Southeastern Division Police Headquarters in Mount Gambier described the operation as a learn-as-you-go exercise. On May 30th, a second effort was made, again unsuccessful. The police search was eventually postponed as the crew sought naval expertise on the dive, estimated to take several months of training. Disasters like these happen once in a decade. People were terrified and surprised by this accident. I hope they take care of themselves before diving into the shaft.